Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS Inform. And once again, it's Friday and time to talk with State Senator Mark Messmer, representing District 48, as the legislation has kind of done their work this week, but Friday's your day off, and you come in here to the studios and tell us kind of what happened this week and what we can look forward to next week.
Sure.
Thanks for coming to the
show.
show.
My pleasure. Always glad to do this on Fridays. I'm never sure what the news media is picking up and what stories are hitting the paper throughout the week, but bills that we worked on, things that happened, and you know, ones that we had 35 bills pass out of the Senate this week,
Wow.
sent over to the House, and of those, some of them are very boring, and some of them are just tweaking other existing laws. So I try to bring you in what I think are some of the more interesting issues that we worked on.
Well, I'm glad that you do, because sometimes we get fixated on just like one big issue, and we don't pay attention to the other things that are going through that are important.
Yep, we've had a lot of legislation we've processed through. We got about 2 weeks left in the first half of session. So next week I think we'll have some, longer days. A week from Monday when we finish up all of our second reading amendment of bills. That'll be the one. That day will probably run from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. It'll be a long, grueling day.
Yeah. Okay. But there were some things that did come out of the Senate this week that were voted on.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So one of the bills that I think is pretty important to help, we're putting in extra money into what we call the School Safety Grant Program, raising it from $50,000 per school to $100,000 per school district. So we're throwing more money to the programs, but still to get it done quicker. We're going to allow school corporations, they can already do a capital projects, levy. Like if you're going to build a wing onto your school, if there's capital projects that you want to do, we have thresholds where you have to do a referendum, and if you do a referendum and it passes for a capital project, then it doesn't go against the tax caps that that local government are kind of pinned down with. But sometimes if you just want to do school safety improvements only, you're not going to be doing a $50 million new middle school or elementary. You just want to do the school safety improvements to your school, and we allow that to fund a resource officer. You could use that to fund a resource officer in every school, not just in the school district. It would allow them to do any kind of security systems they need, on the building, any kind of hardening of the building, and all of our other property tax referendums that we put out have a 7-year. Whenever you do that, that funding through the property tax portion of it, it has a 7-year lifetime to it. The school safety grant property tax referendum would have a 10-year lifetime. So just allow the process to move, quicker. So that passed out. I believe it was 41 to 7, so that was pretty strong. Pretty strong. And some of the folks who voted against it, I would just, their argument for voting against it, part of a bill that we passed in 2013 was if a school corporation decides they want to train staff or train teachers, to be able to have a firearm in the building. It has to be secure, they have to be trained, but the ongoing training of those people that are certified, to do that in the school, this bill just allowed them to be paid for out of the school safety grant rather than have to pull money from your operating funds to train them. The school corporations, and there are some, depending on their location, that have done it, and they said it's a quarterly training of 8 hours of training per quarter. Proficiency standards they have to hit, and they're paying for it out of just normal operating funds. They wanted to be able to pay for that out of this school safety grant revenue, and so they said this bill. The reason why they voted no was it's going to allow guns in schools. Well, that ship has already sailed. They can already do it. This is just allowing to pay for the ongoing training of those people. So It should have been unanimous, but it wasn't.
Well, not everything will be.
No. Oh, no.
As
we'd
we'll
like it to be,
yeah.
but not always.
Right.
But still, of all the bills that we passed this week, all 35 bills were bipartisan support. Sometime it might have only been, one or two of the minority party, voting for them, but every bill we passed was bipartisan. So, and that's a good sign of,
Yes.
that things aren't just partisan issues. A couple of my bills passed out unanimously this week. One was setting up the Indiana Defense Task Force to help us be more proactive in working collaboratively between the defense bases, the defense industry, and allow some collaboration with our surrounding states, when they're going after, Pentagon contracts. Right now, the states' overall spending by the Defense Department is about 1% of their total Defense Department spending, and our director of the Indiana Office of Defense Development thinks we have the potential to raise that to 2%. With being proactive and using this group to help look for ways to maximize that, which would be a pretty big. I mean, it's not a 1% increase; it's a 100% increase.
Yeah,
so that's a big step, but she thinks we can get there.
And that's significant because we have Crane within our area. Yes.
Crane, you have Atterbury and Muscatatuck. You have Grissom Air Force Base. There's a couple of Air National Guard, one in Terre Haute, one in Fort Wayne. I mean, and the defense contractors, a company like Ameriqual down in Evansville, they produce the MREs. There's Rolls-Royce in Indianapolis. You think Rolls-Royce cars? No, they make jet engines almost strictly for military aircraft. Probably $1 billion a year. A place up in South Bend that makes the Humvees. I mean, which is another almost $1 billion a year. So there's a lot of defense work in big numbers. Plus throw what happens at Crane on top of that. So looking forward to that one and how we can be more proactively engaged in looking at how to improve those opportunities. The Victims of Criminals Act, Senate Bill 551, passed this week unanimously out of the Senate and had bipartisan authorship on it. I had some co-authors from Democrat leadership and strong support. No questions at all on the floor presentation. It was pretty comprehensive, but well received by the members on our side of the building, and hopefully it'll get smooth sailing on the House side. Another issue in dealing with victims of sex crimes was Senate Bill 27, and currently we have a punitive damages cap. Like you can have a civil award for actual damages, and then and all of our statutes, whatever your actual damages are, you can get 3 times that in what they call punitive damages, with a cap of $50,000. But on a sex crime punitive damage award, 75% of that goes into a victims of crime fund. So of that $50,000 max, $37,500 of that would go to it's a good fund, a good program. It funds a lot of programs that deal with victims of sex crimes, and only 25% of that went to the actual victim, which would have been a maximum of $12,500. So really didn't leave with that punitive fund program being split 75-25, it didn't leave very much for the victim. So on that bill, we raised the cap to $250,000 and flipped the ratios to send 25% of $250 is still $62,500 to go more money to the victims of crime, and then allow the victim to actually have something when it's all said and done. And that was approved, I think, 41-6. So pretty solid vote on that one. Senate Bill 535, which we passed or authorized yesterday by I think a 41-6 vote, would limit cities and towns from expanding their what they call it extraterritorial power, where they can have ordinances that go out a couple miles outside the city limits. Not allow any additional expansion of those. I mean, whoever has them, as of January 1st this year, they're all grandfathered in. But we have and most of the counties, I'm going to say all but maybe 5 or 6 that are in our area, most counties have county zoning and then city zoning. And what's happening in communities where the problem came up was in a couple of counties where people that were wanting to put in wind farms for power generation wanted to set up wind farm operations maybe 3 to 4 miles outside the city limit, and since they couldn't get the county commissioners to ban them, the opponents of them, they would go to all the towns and cities in a community and have them put a 4-mile buffer on blocking them. And by the time you go 4 miles from the perimeter of every town and city in a community, you pretty much block the whole county. Yeah, but if they already have county zoning, but they couldn't get the county commissioners, to do what they wanted, they thought, well, we'll go at it, have the cities do it and block everything that way. And that's really, if there's county zoning, cities shouldn't be extending their authority out into where the counties already have it. Mm-hmm. So that passed, with a strong bipartisan vote out of the Senate. We'll see if we can get the House to give it some traction this year. But to me, it's a reasonable request to let the areas of jurisdiction maintain what they're doing. The last bill that we had that actually happened on the House side this year, but I hope I hope it was a statement of we're done messing with it. Representative Zemke from Batesville had a bill that would have eliminated township advisory boards, and they passed the Kernan-Shepard report in 2007. That was the outgoing Lieutenant Governor Kernan and a retiring Supreme Court Judge David Shepard, and they came up with a list of recommendations on what they thought could streamline county government. Their opinions from those two guys, and we've implemented probably 3/4 of it. And everything that could be done, dealing with conflict of interest rules and anti-nepotism rules, and we've hashed through that thing. Implemented about everything you could, that seemed to have an effective outcome. But one portion of that was elimination of township government, and for the last 4 or 5 years, although we've completed everything else in that list, probably, I'm going to say 2013, 2014, but there's always been somebody, keep refiling the elimination of township government. But, the township government funds fire services, they maintain, township cemeteries, and they deliver poor relief. That's basically the functions that township level government does. And by consolidating and, if you eliminate township governments, if you say you have 9 township trustees, across the county, most of them don't make very much money. By the time you combine all them, you would have to hire somebody in the courthouse full-time to do that. And by the time you take all those part-time employees and replace them with a full-time employee, with insurance, with vacation, with, all the other, the math just doesn't work out to save money administratively. And it wouldn't save money on fire services unless you're planning on shutting down fire services. Well, that has an adverse effect on people's homeowners insurance.
Especially in a rural area.
In a rural area. Township government in rural Indiana, has a function and it works. And if you take those decision-making levels to the county level, farther away from the people that they're delivering poor relief to, is there going to be the more likelihood of fraud and abuse when you take the decision making away farther from the people that are asking for it? If taking decision making to a higher level of bureaucracy was led to the epitome of efficiency, then the federal government would be what we want to copy, and I don't think that's working so well. No. So at the state level, really the closer you get decision making to the people that are that are impacted, the better better decisions you get. So if you're not going to save money, theoretically, and you're not going to provide better service, then why do it? And that bill got voted down 18 votes for and 75 against.
And that was in the House.
in the House. It's House Bill 1650. And they passed a bill last year to eliminate all small townships. It barely passed the House, and we didn't hear it in the Senate. And so hopefully the days of discussing this issue, are done.
And it won't come up in the Senate. It won't be brought up.
No,
So,
no,
okay, so
not
that
this year at
basically is
all.
done.
It's
Okay.
that 18 to 75 nail was a pretty heavy nail in that coffin.
Okay. All right. Well, Senator, thank you very much for coming in and kind of updating us on things that happened this week.
Okay.
Next week, another full session of bills coming out of committee and being passed or not passed in some cases, and we'll find out about those next week.
Great. Thank you.
Once again, thank you for coming in. Our guest has been State Senator Mark Messmer, representing District 48. Thank you for watching WJTS Inform. We're local people watching local people.